from their encounters with races from other planets. The information is the activation. Let's awaken this world together. We are the forever students, and we will not be silent. We are the ones that we've been waiting for pretty while. Welcome, everybody, to Full Spectrum Universe. My name is Rob Yonks. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have another amazing episode for you tonight, and we are the Embattled Broadcast from behind enemy lines in the once great state of New York. For all those new here, thank you for joining us. Please subscribe, hit that bell. Let's get moving into what we're going to do tonight, right? Tonight is a little bit of a special night. Tonight, we're going to unveil a new series of episodes, and this is called The Lost Knowledge of Humanity. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie eventual basic events today to past events and how those past events essentially made way for all the things that we've been talking about with the energy grids, with the different wars that took place, with all the different things that we've been discussing since the bifurcation, right? We're going to start calling that timeline split the bifurcation. So before we dive into all of that, we're going to tie all that stuff up with a nice, neat bow, and we're going to show you how those events correspond to today and what systems are in place today that are actually hindering humanity. Now, we know history is written by the victors. Tonight, we're going to go into actual history and show you how they're rewritten for the victors to take hold of humanity itself. Now, tonight is more so an intro. So we're going to talk about a few principled points. And those principled points, of course, I did a slideshow with it. I always do. But those principal points are going to lead us into specific events. And specific events are going to tie into today, in the here and the now. And that's the importance of things. So, like I said, before we get into that, has anybody else out there, and if you are in the chat, please hit a 1. Over the last 3 days have been experiencing a almost debilitating headache. Almost debilitating. I've had a headache for 3.5 days. Even right now, as I'm talking to you, I have a massive headache. On the 14th, it was a migraine. Like one, I couldn't move, and I was at work. It was really, really bad. And I looked and I said, maybe thinking about why am I getting this headache? Of course, I have to, get my glasses upgraded, things like that. I stare at the screens a lot. So if you have had a headache, please put the 1 in the chat so we can see if anybody else is experiencing this. And I'm going to tell you what I think it is. So right now, I have like sensitive skin over my temple and right here. And this has happened from all of this, right? From all the days that I've had this. I thought to myself, well, maybe it was the archons trying to attack me for the unloading of information I did just the other day, kind of putting them on the spot. And then I was like, no, this is different. This isn't an attack. I know that I walk in a higher frequency, therefore the archons can't even come near me, right? They can't get close. So I did start to dig a little bit. And I'm not sure if anybody's been looking into the Schumann resonance over the last 3 or 4 days. Well, I'm going to show it to you because if you're experiencing some of these ascension symptoms, not just headaches, but I think a lot of different ascension symptoms, you're going to understand why when I pull up this picture. So looking into the Schumann resonance, this was the 13th, 14th, 15th, right? Now, normally it's at 7.32 gigahertz. When we look at this map and we see that white spot where the edges are green, that is a bump, right? That's a bump in the radiation and energies coming from the sun that is affecting the Schumann resonance. Now, on the 14th is when my headache was absolutely the worst. But do we see that massive jump in the Schumann? It is absolutely insane. I'm sorry, 7.82. Yeah. Well, this went all the way up to almost 44. This was a 30-point jump in the Schumann resonance. So, of course, the ascension symptoms are going to be so bad during those times, right? So, this is what I'm attributing to this headache that I have today. Now, with that being said, I'm going to ask you to please to forgive me if I stall for a second or I stop a minute. This is what today brings, but this is going to be an equally important series to the Galactical Beginning series, because with the Galactical Beginning series, we tailored a timeline up to the now, or at least into the most recent events. And now we're going to go back and look at some of those areas. We're going to tie them into current events. It's going to be absolutely exceptional. I hope you're here for the ride. Smash that like button, subscribe, you know, share this stream out. Let's get people on board with what we're doing here. Let's grow the community. And always, please, you guys did such an amazing job after the Archon video. It was almost 70 comments on the Archon video. Please leave a comment after the stream is over. That is one of the biggest things to push this video past the algorithmic wardens, right? So let's begin. The lost knowledge of humanity. This is going to be one of the most prolific bodies of work I think that I'm going to be doing as of right now. So this is an intro into a series where we'll go over and will be a focal point for the current of right now and the past. And we're going to elaborate more so with certain eras like the Roman era, the Greek era, the Arthurian or Arthur era. We're going to talk about ancient civilizations and some of the histories and some of the people that were put in place to diminish the histories coming out of those specific cultures to essentially ensnare and trap and enslave humanity. So, by bringing light to this, what we're doing is we're liberating ourselves from all of this. And here is, as we see that there is more to life and more to what this reality is than what the mainstream says. So let's start this off. So, as the ascension and disclosure experiences are becoming more amplified, we're slowly starting to recover the lost knowledge of humanity. And this is what we're probing into, right? Which reveals highly refined periods of living in harmony with natural laws to promote and to heal environment supports, and also a consciousness expansion and somewhat of a unity intelligence. This is a momentous time for human liberation. Yet it is also a time of awakening into greater realizations of betrayal that may be prevalent in many situations as they're being revealed to us now. Trying to find balance within the expansions and contradictions of this rebirthing process as it's transpiring in the midst of a hidden war over consciousness is stretching many of us to the outer limits at this time. This is also why I decided to start with the Schumann resonance, right? We're all in a spiritual battle, and it is absolutely testing all of our gusto, all of our limits, all of our how to and ableness, right? We all feel it. There is a lot of energetic fluxes happening as well. So let us continue. For many years, it's been made obvious that the heliacal rising of the star Saturn, or Sirius, sorry, the rising of the star Sirius during the time of the Pharaoh's observance of the new year during this Sothic cycle. This generates powerful effects in the planetary grid network in current times. So this is a past event, essentially affecting the grids today. Many worldwide events, such as wars, tragedies, and timeline shifts, had occurred in the collective consciousness within this small window of time. So the start of the new year coincides with the heliacal rising, which was during mid-July, right? That was this past July, in which the date stamp of July 17th repeatedly surfaces to be the historical timeline trigger event during the most prominent of the Egyptian timelines. So, like the important events transpiring during the 18th dynasty, let's say, and the Egyptian 18th dynasty, during the phase between July 16th through July 19th, and on the midpoint of July 17th. So, some of the things that have happened during this time throughout history are: the first atomic bomb exploded near Alamogordo, New Mexico on July 16th, 1945, right? Also, the beginning of the Spanish Civil War started on the 17th of July, 1936. And last but not least, the United Nations completed the statute establishing the International Criminal Court, which began sittings 4 years later, July 17th, 1998. Now, if you know what we're going to go down to a little bit later into this episode between the WEF and the United Nations, they are one and the same, right? They are all bodies of elites that essentially are trying to make mankind capitulant to their rule, and they take direction from archons and even so higher the AI that's out there, right? Basically, the bad guys. So now we're seeing a lot of things happening here, right? I'm going to focus on these events very quickly. So we have a more direct access to the entire angelic human tribal shield genetic records, which included assorted fragments of information that are connected to the historical events recorded in the organic timelines. This time portal is opening and is generally associated with a major consciousness shift in the future direction of timelines, right? And the controllers attempt to hijack the direction of the momentum with assorted divide and conquer tactics and warfare tactics, right? So, as we keep going, this allows us to more easily form a conduit to connect directly with other stations of identity and spiritual family from the past or future timelines. It functions like the personal rainbow bridge to the trans time continuum that opens a clear path in order for those with the inner eyes to see and to be given the gift of spiritual vision in order to see more of the truthful events that have been hidden from us, right? Or many people of which are found buried in the missing historical records. So basically points in time that were buried, right? The missing pieces of humanity's historical records contain energetic signatures that can be tracked and found in the planetary grid networks themselves. And also, it can be translated by these angelic human beings that have retained some of their original DNA memory. There are also many records comprised of physical evidence, artifacts, and ancient writings that have been proposedly hidden or purposely hidden from the public eye by those serving the Luciferian covenant and the ongoing Atlantean conspiracy. So we see what's happening. They're burying time, right? And this gives us one of the things that I always say, and I'm going to bring it back to me real quick. Is a man or a woman who doesn't know where they come from is a man or a woman lost. So to find out where we come from, we have to have an accurate depiction of the historical timeline from the beginning of galactic civilization to right now in this minute. One stray from the factual evidence can throw the entire timeline off, and then it becomes the false timeline. So we understand that. That is what has happened numerous amounts of times throughout all of history. So there's false timelines upon false timelines upon false timelines, so far removed in false timelines that we could barely see where the true timeline lies. And that's the issue, right? So we have to go back into each and every second or each and every time period and bring forth the information. And then from that information, we discern ourselves what that means. I am not going to sit here and dictate to you truth. I'm going to tell you what I believe is the truth, but that's for you to decide. I can't tell everybody this is the odds honest truth. That's it. Everything else is a false. That would be so intellectually irresponsible of me, and I wouldn't be able to look in the mirror tomorrow. I would never do that. So this information that we're going to dovetail into in each and every episode, and this series is going to be a little bit more sporadic. I'm going to tell you that up front because diving into this information, it's not always prevalent what to talk about in the sense of the hidden aspects of it. I have to dig and dig and dig and research like crazy to find correlating points to figure out exactly how I can approach each and every section of time, right? So let's keep going. So as we go on, right? However, there is a big problem with recovering our historical records that has been weaponized against humanity in every way possible, right? These records have been the main source of conflict in the timeline wars for thousands of years, as they open awareness to free energy devices, off planet origins, and are connected to recovering and reclaiming the lost knowledges of humanity, right? So, this is where we're going in a direction that could potentially get us in trouble because they don't want us to know these things. But we don't care about that. We're here to put the information out. Whatever will be, you know? So as we keep going, this is talking about 2021 to right now. And I'm sure this is the bifurcation of time. This is what we've been talking about and setting up with our winter solstice events going for the last 3 years, right? This is that higher frequency people go one way and it's stable, it's an ascending hub, or people get left behind on a lower frequency, which is unstable, and a descending hub, which means that humanity may end up more like animals than they would like to be in that unstable environment. We see that happening now, right? Emotions are taking over. So in 2021, the heliacal rising of Sirius actually began on August 11th's magnetic peak cycle. It has been clarified that the astronomical event, which is another stage of the great bifurcation, is the beginning of that bifurcation. This culminating through the 2022 winter solstice, the surfacing of the next level of historical records actually shifted timelines into an organic timeline of ascension disclosure. And this is transpiring within the collective consciousness in which the Modanic family is making decisions upon the future evolutionary direction of their entire spiritual family. There are many varieties of star families that are the original source of Modanic lineages incarnated on Earth through the different ray systems. And thus the decision is based upon the maximization of future evolutionary growth potentials. So, understanding where we come from gives us the ability to maximize our potential growth or our limitless growth in exponential steps and bounds into that future evolutionary growth of the entire civilization. So we have to understand that we are doing that by assessing this information. And that's what we talk about. The information is the activation. Understanding and understanding the alignment of it all and how it all works lets you make more informed decisions while maneuvering through it, right? So the intensity of the bifurcation brought many cracks to see through the facade of the mainstream deceptions, right? Which is a big one. That's a big one. I think I might have missed a slide, but whatever the case is, we're going to keep going. So this is where the propagandists are desperate to ring the bells of fear throughout the masses to keep them marching towards their desired goals of mass genocide carried out by the non human controllers, to break it down easily. So there are areas that pose higher risk and even dangerous as descending hubs, and we must be careful to pay attention to where our inner spirit is guiding us. So a line was drawn in the sand on 7/7 between the spiritual warriors of the Christos and those serving the Antichrist spirit, in which rounds of aggressive technological warfare have been targeted to many spiritual groups, spiritual communities, and newly awakened individuals. This could be compared to the next generation of weaponry in developing asymmetrical warfare, using surprise ambush attacks targeting many different groups. So we are witnessing another level of covert high technological weaponry of extreme insidious mind control tactics along with intimidation rhetoric. This is also heightened level of spiritual warfare which can have serious impacts on the mental health of those caught in the crossfire. Thus, all means of spiritual edification through prayer, meditation, inner study, and developing a passionate connection with God and the cosmic Christos to guide you in a divine alignment and a divine location is your best defense. So, we're seeing that the communities coming together, right, is giving us a broader understanding of those who can see through those cracks in the facade and pull out the actual hidden knowledge of humanity and then spread that hidden knowledge across the community. There's focal points. Now, to understand who you are through meditation, prayer, and creating that connection to your higher power, right, is essential to lay down a defense against these people who would inherently use you, abuse you, and dump you when you're no longer of use. They've infiltrated the spiritual community, the ascension community, and the disclosure community. So we have to be leery of all comers, right? Let people tell you who they are, and they will. So as we keep going forward. So as we move into the gateway of the heliarchal rising of Sirius, leading into the magnetic peak cycle, it opens access into more of the timelines of the lost knowledge of humanity. That had energetic impacts which support alignment for collective awareness of free energy sources, the many advanced technologies that we used before the intruders invaded, right? To combat this from occurring, there is an obvious retaliation to all of those groups working for disclosure and such technologies, as well as aggressive attempts to erase and distort the more accurate accounts of our previous history. We are in the midst of another global attempt made by the power elite to erase recent history and basically indoctrinate the young children who are already undergoing another level of trauma based mind control through public indoctrination of falsified histories as written by the controller's narrative. So the negative entity agenda, this mind control weaponry, has been accelerated into another quality completely. And this is sourcing from the red cube matrix design that comes from the Wessa black hole entities, in which the prime headquarters is, or its nesting operations, has been identified underground in the Carpathian Basin. So we know where they are. We know what they're doing. We see their tactic, and we're calling them out for it. That's what we're doing here, right? This is how we maneuver ourselves into defending ourselves. So, as we keep going, this appears to be some of the most treacherous and insidious mind control programming broadcasts of fanaticism, zealotry, radicalism, with misguided and violent types of hero saviors or saviorism that are laced with pure poison in order to generate as much harm to those involved as possible. Those that are deeply emotionally wounded, traumatized, and with addiction problems tend to be more easily manipulated in order to be used as sleepers for the dark portal possessions and the pawns for carrying out asymmetrical spiritual warfare for divide and conquer methods. So, this appears to be happening more often as an overwhelming level of disinformation is being dropped to rouse confusion and distraction, to derail groups and the greater population from staying in alignment with the truth when over the target. To reveal lies, we must stay in that truth of our core spirit, which shines the bright light onto that darkness and which can only survive in the shadows of ignorance, that darkness. So, by us understanding, we cast the ignorance out and the darkness goes away, or at least to a point where it's controllable. The darkness will always try and attempt to get you back. So, it's not without heeding that warning, right? But we cast it into the shadows where it can no longer have an effect on the day to day. So, although it can be tough, right? Navigating in the control matrix and its propagation of blatant lies and deceptions, it's very important breakthroughs are occurring in the field, which hold many incredible positive revelations about our past and as keys to remembering the lost knowledges of humanity. So, all over the world, more hidden truths are revealing on a range of topics that are slowly coming into view through concerned groups that are growing larger by the day, in which public citizen investigators sharing their research and findings, and it is concerned public citizens with powers of critical thinking and investigative inquiry that desire to find that truth, that they begin to ask the right questions of the control narrative that we've been told. And as a result, these groups these groups of investigators and their efforts and sharing their research online with others, this generates a big ripple effect for disclosure itself. This starts to uncover the inconsistencies, obvious cover stories, wrong and mismatched dates of supposed events in our history. The spirit of truth lays the groundwork for revealing many lies and deceptions that the human race have been told by the supposed authorities put in charge of telling us about our history, timelines, wars, public figures, presidents, inventors, artists, and so forth, which begins to clarify to the many tall tales told about the origins of ancient civilizations on Earth and how this supposedly led humanity into the current culture, right? So I let that settle for a minute. This is why we're going into this information, because we are going to be a part of the solution and not part of the problem. We're going to find the information, we're going to bring it forward. This is what we've done in the Full Spectrum family on Telegram. We've opened the resource to all ideas, all conceptions of what reality is, and we let it out and we give it to all those who want to participate without forcing people to be there. But this is the importance of it all, right? This is what we do. This is how we do it. Myself, Omar, many of our friends have been working at this for years to try and get this information that we see as something prevalent to those who will listen or those who at least want to understand the truth. And day by day, those communities grow. So we have a responsibility to keep furthering the progression of that community. And I take that, and I know Omar takes that so serious. We're so serious about that. We want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure that you have the best ability to essentially take on these objectives yourself and to understand a little bit further than you did yesterday. So, you know, hats off to Omar and the NDE conference he did over the last week. It was amazing. It was amazing. And if you missed it, I suggest you go there and check it out because he threw it down. And this is the second time he's done this. And the first time was amazing. And I was like, oh, how's he going to top that? He sure as shit did. I'll tell you that. He surely did. It was awesome. So as we keep going, right? We're going to talk about the war over free energy, right? The war over free energy and the moon as a weapon. This is one of the biggest misconceptions. And this is basically giving you a taste of the type of topics we're going to delve into, right? That was the intro to what we're going to be working on over the next however many episodes this goes, right? We don't put a time frame on it. The information comes to me as it comes and we'll get it out there. Some shows may not be about that. I have some guests coming up. We've got Geraldine Orozco coming on. Going to be another great episode with her. She's amazing. So let's talk about the war over free energy and the moon as a weapon. Many times it's been discussed that the angelic humans on planet Earth are in the midst of a war over energy, which is a war over consciousness, right? As well as a war over timelines. While most of the human population is asleep to this very fact, through many wars and genocidal campaigns that have taken place over many lifetimes, including alien hybridization breeding programs to infect our blood and DNA by introducing races that gradually took away more and more of what it means of our natural energy resource as well, which is us, and blank slated our history during the end of these major astrological cycles, right? So, a major outfit of alien machinery or black hole technology was further installed every 6,500 or 64,080 years. Sorry, 6,480 years. Every 6,500 years, but really every 6,480 years. During each quarter of the 26,000 year cycle, right? The Yuga cycle, as we call it. They did this to gain control over the magnetosphere through the manipulation of the dodecahedron geometry, which has the great influence on the organic magnetism, carbon matter, and manifesting timelines. Remember, we did sacred geometry, right? You're going to see flashes of all of the episodes we did from probably the last 12 to 15 episodes come back into this specific set or series of episodes, right? So, by gaining control over the properties of the dodecahedron and its connection to our sun, by running and merging artificial magnetism tied to this lunar matrix. This combination was used as a weapon to induce surface weather catastrophes such as major global floods, which have discovered that the dodecahedron, which is a primary platonic solid geometrical shape that is connected to the aether, not the ether, the aether and liquid plasma, transmitted by our sun, and having 6,480 degrees, which is the sum of the angles of all of its faces, right? So we're going to put up one of these graphs so you can see it and how they all correspond, right? Let us keep going. So Tesla told us that the aether behaves as liquid for matter and as a solid for light, and heat and other geometry acts as the building blocks of our matrix, which need the structural framework of the aether component, right? So through the dodecahedron geometry, which is the aether function, the rest of the platonic solids and elements are organized within all of the energy flows into specific frequency patterns throughout our dimension of time and space. The bottom line for the negative entities to control the dodecahedron properties of the 6,480 degrees, and by doing so, have control over matter forms and what manifests on Earth's surface, right? So this is a geometric or geodetic knowledge behind the rigged system of creating this prison matrix on this hospital planet, and has played a significant role in how this hidden invasion was accomplished by these invaders. So a catastrophic flooding, earthquakes, and volcanic activity have been a major tool of the negative entities to bury, hide, and destroy ancient artifacts, structures, and buildings that reflect an established human culture, as well as the remaining evidence of advanced technologies of human civilizations. Right? So NASA also has set out several propaganda news pieces on the history of the moon wobbles and catastrophic flooding, just basically destroying the Earth's surface, suggesting that we brace for impact. Basically, NASA took it upon themselves to talk about the wobbling of the moon and how the wobbling of the moon has catastrophic effects to the tides, to volcanic activity, to the tectonic plates, and to the Earth as a whole. Right? Basically, laying cover for this these entities having control of that matrix from the moon. It's crazy. It gets deep, guys. It gets really deep. You know, it's like there's a lot of different things that kind of come into you know that kind of come into our line of sight, and I'm going to try and explain this the best way I can. And they're so important, but we somewhat brush them off too. It's like because it's hard to understand when we use the words like I just used. It's hard for even me reading it to understand what I'm saying without taking a step back and reading it 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Like, wait a minute, wait a minute. Is that what this is saying? And it is like 9 times out of 10. If my first instinct is usually the right one, but these cycles are happening over and over and over. And what they've done is we're going to talk about it in a second is they've stepped up the sequence of these cycles. So it's not every 6,400 years anymore. It's every 100 years. So they whitewash everything. So the people 200 years from now will not have any idea of who, how, or what we even truly were and how we were finding our ascension within this time, right? So let us keep going because we got about 20 minutes left. So it can be noted that that these negative their violent religious propaganda, and they're especially fond of pushing narratives around catastrophic floods said to be the result of humans angering the gods, right? And in a way, it's kind of true, but it's not. So these catastrophic floods are a part of the Armageddon software, which we've talked about before, that the negative entities like to use to trigger collective humanity's previous traumas around flooding. And certainly every person on this planet has the horrible flood memory in their subconscious, right? And as recent as the 1800s, major global flooding occurred, yet the historical evidence of this catastrophe event or catastrophic event was totally erased from public knowledge, right? So while the controllers pushed for mass immigration into the United States, millions of people that entered the United States at the turn of the century would not remember the previous culture or histories, while newer buildings and cities were planned on top of the buried evidence of our past. So, this is how they do this, right? There was a great migration from Europe during the early 1900s. Some of it was caused from famine, other from flood, other because people were looking for that prosperous dream of the American dream, right? Which certain times it seems as if it's a tailor-made fantasy, right? This American dream, but it's not. It's not because we hold the will over that. They distort that dream by engineering specific events to placate our reality, right? So, and it's crazy because we almost allow them to do it, right? Now that we're waking up to it, if we still allow them to do it, we're being complacent and we're no longer on the ascension timeline in that sense, right? We have to save those around us and think about them more so than ourselves. But we also have to keep in mind that of us too, right? But you're supposed to give out and not expect anything in return. And that's kind of how it works. So as we migrate through what we're talking about here, you'll see that they've used these programs of Armageddon to really break down societal boundaries as well, from ancient civilizations up to now. And they get like it's crazy. You see things like Tartaria that comes up. Tartaria was one of these civilizations that was worldwide. Everybody knew about it. They had fairs all over the world. But I bet you any amount of money that if unless you looked through in only specific textbooks written before 1958, you wouldn't have any idea of what I'm talking about. So the kids in school today will never understand what true Tartaria was or what the sediments of Tartaria was, which is a beautiful sediment, right? And how they used energy to further enhance humanity. This is where we have to get back to. So, again, that's just my opinion. Let us keep going. So, history is rewritten by the victors, right? The children are educated to believe the new falsified accounts of history. The same negative entity playbook for engineering the Great Reset is happening right now to intentionally displace populations for mass diaspora, right? Destroying local culture, targeting children, and the false history and control ideology, introducing disease, engineering false flag events, or war. And they destroy and censor public records and public disclosure to incite mass terrorism and confusion through media, right? They invent classifications to anger and further divide people and soft kill those that don't comply. And then again, rinse and repeat as it keeps going. And now you can see the uptick in my voice because I get angry reading this. Who who do these people think they are to be able to do that? Is the question I have. Not while I'm here, and not while I'm around. We're not going to let that go unnoticed, right? And I know everybody out there feels the same way. Not while we're here. No longer. No more. This is over now, right? This is all over. And it's it's crazy. It's crazy to think of how long they've had their talents in humanity and how, you know, uh let's uh let's keep moving on because I don't want to get myself in trouble here. So, as we keep going, so thousands of years ago, this agenda was a planned gradual takeover of the planetary field in which the magnetosphere would be controlled with artificial magnet and gravitational anomalies, with knowledge that it could also be used as a global mind control device to collapse human consciousness into very low states so that our original DNA would remain unplugged, right? In such a consciousness state where angelic humans are being starved of our natural solar frequency levels, starved of oxygen, starved of pure water and foods, starved from the connection with nature, starved from a disconnection with our inner spirit, while being overlaid with lunar forces of artificial magnetism. We fall into a deep slumber, and we will, while we're in this state of slumber and forced to reincarnate, the negative entities and their controller bloodlines changed our timelines, erased our histories, destroyed the evidence of artifacts, brought in the moon, and stole our advanced knowledge by performing the great reset of erasing global records every 2,160 years, until more recently when they upped their game to every odd 100 years, right? They had a penchant for catastrophic flooding as it effectively buried many civilizations under avalanches of mud or volcanic ash very quickly, which saved them the time and the resources of destroying the evidence of civilizations, destroying civilizations by using direct energy weapons on a one-on-one basis. So, although it appears that these direct energy weapons were used by the negative entities thousands of years ago on Earth during specific Christos missions on the ground in order to obliterate and access the technological devices and the structures being used to protect team members here on Earth. Crazy. So, we see that this has been a game all along. And Susan, I agree, right? But what we're trying to stop now is collateral damage, right? Collateral damage is what we're hoping to alleviate as much as possible. And Susan always has great comments in the chat, just as everybody does. You guys are all awesome. And I feel your energy is on the same line as me right now, and you're feeling it. I know you are. I know you are. I can feel it emanating from the chat. So, as we keep going, introduction of artificial satellite moon base, right? In which the proportions of the moon were made to proportionate to a time cycle that is identical to the series of cataclysmic floods that were used as weapons in previous timelines on Earth's surface. This recon was for the purpose of completely destroying the possibility of the use of the moon base and artificial magnetism to generate another catastrophic flood, right? So, as NASA dutifully warned us, as the dire message given from the Archon Masters, that the radius of the moon is stated to be 1,080 miles, and the diameter of the moon is stated to be double that at 2,160 miles. And if we multiply the diameter by 108, we get the supposed distance between Earth and the moon of 233,280 miles, right? Which is what this picture is showing. The lunar matrix is a false magnetism transmitted from the moon and is designed to emit artificial waves in the geometric shape of 8 lines of reflected symmetry in an octagonal cymatic shape. And the internal angles of any octagon is 1,080 degrees. So the octagon shape has a 1,080-degree hertz frequency that can be doubled harmonically to form into transmit the black cube geometries with a 2,160 hertz frequency, right? So the Dome of Rock in Jerusalem is the second Grail Stargate that was built with an octagonal floor plan aligning it with the moon base, and therefore a black cube matrix. We can notice octagon geometry can be found in many ancient structures built on powerful ley lines throughout the Earth's grid, as well as black cube designs used for religious worship, such as in Mecca, right? This all goes back to the moon and lunar control. The moon's artificial matrix became an embedded source of magnetic control with a primary octagonal pattern made in sound waves to manipulate and harvest massive amounts of energy from the Earth grid network. So, how does this play into right now? Well, they're still using this symbolism. This is what we're going to look at now. The octagonal group, which is the name of them, is located in Davos, Switzerland, and is the same group behind the current World Economic Forum and the fourth wave of transhumanist Great Reset that have a black sun chain of command extending to the moon and other planets. These same lunar entities, right, and their preferred bloodlines have been administering an assortment of surface cataclysms by obliterating chosen demographic areas for decimation, right? And the moon, as a magnetic weapon, has been part of their arsenal against human beings on the surface, in which gratefully during the next cycle will not be operational due to the guardian host protection intervention. So we see that the World Economic Forum has their part to play as the lineages of these beings that want control, and essentially they are beholden to the archons. The archons are beholden to the AI, and so on and so on. It goes on and on, right? But it's funny that Schwab the Hutt and Mr. Soros are not going to go to Davos this year. They're afraid for their safety. And I wonder why. Because people are waking up to their discrepancies against humankind. No matter what color you are, no matter what religion you are, race, none of that matters. What matters is that these no do-gooders, right? They are no good, and they are essentially frightened for their lives because of the magnitude of their actions has debilitated the world. It's crazy. It's crazy that they would think that they could get away with all that, right? So you see how we're tying this into current events. So the moon was brought here long, long time ago, but it still has an effect on today's society. And this is what I mean by revealing the lost knowledge of humanity. The human civilizations that lived as the ancient ancestors did knew about this stuff. They were more technologically advanced than we would like to believe. They weren't cavemen. They weren't hurling stones at each other. There's a lot more to it. So, for the last 20 years, it has been the mission to gain clarity on the hidden galactic histories of timeline wars so that those of us that are the ground crew of the Christos mission can understand in detail what has happened to Earth and humanity in the current time. Now we enter the first stages of the Great Awakening, where humanity learns more about the lost knowledge of humanity and begins to recognize that the rewritten history is also much closer to us in current time, right? And as just a few hundred years, we had access to levels of technology that are lost to us today. And now, in the right time to gather the information and begin to pull on those thousands of threads that hold the fabric of time together. Original angelic human beings were not drooling cavemen, and we did not come from apes. Angelic humans lived in an advanced technological culture with free energy as one people on one planet. All of the race, religion, and sex meaningless classifications were set up as discriminating factors for fabricating mind control belief systems. And they were created by the archons running the Octagon group and others, using the lunar forces through genetic and social engineering to intentionally divide and conquer humanity for their alien masters. So we ask the questions, right? What if every single historical event you learned in the Rockefeller controlled and approved educational curriculum was an utter and total fabrication designed to indoctrinate the human population into the slave class? What if what we're taught about our nation, our culture, our way of life on earth, our beliefs in medicine, history, religion, finance, economic theories were based upon intentionally crafted archontic deceptions and was a total and utter lie, right? Would it be possible? Like, think about it. This is crazy, right? Would it be possible to believe that up to approximately 200 years ago, humanity had some areas with free energy sources, gorgeous architecture structures designed from the ancient builder race, generating atmospheric energy as proven by Tesla? The planet was covered with historical artifacts and indisputable evidence of our advanced human culture until it was destroyed by the direct energy weapons, floods, and other weather cataclysms that were artificially generated by non human species invading our planet. So, who are we now without this false history and culture that we've been brainwashed to accept as our own? What if these intruders are putting into play right now with the Great Reset the same warfare tactics that have been used against humanity several times already to mind wipe our current history into another digression of complete and total consciousness slavery? And this time they may use transhumanistic robots to do that, right? So, this is the last passage we're going to do today. This is the defining moment in our historical timeline in order to face the truth of what is coming to be revealed about that lost knowledge of humanity. Many awakening people, starseeds and indigos, are awakening to their higher role to be the investigators, the truth seekers, and the curator of digging and finding these historical records, piecing together dates and historical accounts as an archivist, and providing a platform for the foundation of disseminating the release of some of these records into the public. This is a big piece supporting the global disclosure events and piecing together the hidden human histories of even just the last 100 years. We do not have a trustworthy media, and so it will be up to some of us to act with integrity and to serve humanity within this capacity. It will mean that we need nerves of steel, a strong core self, and a deep, profound relationship with God so that we can be the strong foundation and anchor rocks for our families and our loved ones. What is going to be revealed in the years to come is going to be so shocking that it will rock the foundation of every last one of us at any level of this spiritual development. And as the depth and complexity of these deceptions and lies to erase our timelines and to steal everything from our species is completely and utterly mind boggling. We need each other to survive. This is the greater revelation of truth during this disclosure event. And so it is with this awareness that we can prepare to be ready for anything and to hold and to hold on to nothing, to become as mentally flexible and open-minded as possible. May all the truth seekers act ethically and in the best interests of all of humanity. And as the rabbit hole will continue on into the areas where we had not dared to even imagine. Now, that last phrase, I did not write that, but I felt it so powerful that I had to read it to you. Okay. I'm going to be honest about that. I did not write that part. Therefore, it's out on the table, right? This is a look into what this series is going to be beholden on and what we're going to explore over the next however many episodes, you know? And things are changing. Remember, 2022 was the year of the truth seeker. So we put all of this information out there to bear fruit. And now 2023 is going to be the year of accountability. And we've seen it already. And not to be political, but if you look at what the government is sort of pushing for with certain things happening right now, you'll see that more things are bubbling out from from the underbelly of their corruption to be thrusted out into the mainstream. We're seeing some accountability being held there. But again, it's about accountability for us, right? We have to hold ourselves accountable. That's the ultimate disclosure of all this. And then 2024 is going to be the reunification. What does that mean? That means that all of these stigmas or cultural norms or race, color, creed, all the rest of it is going to fall by the wayside, right? And when it falls by the wayside, we'll be able to look at each other as brothers and sisters again, right? So that's a perfect comment. Christina says, we are only 16 days in and it's already been a wild ride. Wait, just wait. It's going to get wilder. So, with all that being said, this was tonight's presentation. We're going to keep going with this in other episodes. Please like, share, subscribe. Also, please leave a comment underneath the video after it's finished. You have no understanding of how much that pushes the algorithm to get this out. We need to get this out, right? It's our duty to get this out. I am just the mouthpiece. The collective is the importance of this all, right? So, with all that being said, I love all of you, and I'm so eternally grateful for 17,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. It means the world to me. You all mean the world to me. So, hold that light strong and let it resonate with all those around you. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. If not us, then who? The information is the activation. And it's up to us to give it to others so that they can be activated and brought into the community. I love you all. Thank you all so much and have a great evening.